Welcome to another episode of Get Real. I'm Tom Lemons. So it's been a while since we've had Commissioner Steve Champion on, and we're going to bring him on here in just a minute from Hernando County to tell us what's been going on. But he has a specific issue that he wants to get off his chest, and I think a lot of people here in the state of Florida and across the country may have the same problem with something called the flock cameras. So, Steve, thank you for joining me today. How's your week been so far?
Well, first off, Tom, thanks for having me on to talk about these flock cameras. But just to get started, just explain to your listeners what the delegation is. So once a year, we have our senator, which is now Ralph Mazzullo. He was just elected. Jeff Holcomb is one of our representatives, and the county split. So we have had a new special election with Samantha Scott was elected, but she's not sworn in yet. So all we had was Representative Holcomb and Senator Mazzullo for the county. And what they do is they come to the county once a year and they hear about concerns from the county's perspective, as well as the elected officials, as well as nonprofits, citizens, everything, to kind of hear what Hernando County's priorities are. So after the presentation of our county and some of the elected officials, I asked to be put on the agenda to directly speak to our representatives about these flock cameras that I believe are unconstitutional, as well as hundreds, if not thousands, of people around the state. You can see that from the lawsuits. You can just pull up YouTube and look at all the concerns about these spy cameras that are out there. Mm-hmm. So that's basically, I wanted to bring that to their attention. And our Senator Mazzullo was really interested in, and he had some conversation back and forth. They didn't really say one way or the other whether they're for them or not. But I believe that we have to get this technology in check, and not just flock cameras, but AI and all the other stuff. And our governor's saying the right things. Our governor's saying, hey, we need a Bill of Rights for AI and, et cetera, because we have to protect our citizens, because this technology is very powerful. Mm-hmm. And we're already seeing lots of misuse on this, and to me, the most important thing is the Constitution. And it should be, I believe we all swore an oath to the Constitution where we were elected, and I intend on honoring that. So I have not been for these from day one. There's been a lot of concerns with it. And basically, I outlined all of the issues with the flock cameras. I outlined the misuse. I outlined the lawsuits, as well as some municipalities and stuff that have had concerns with it during this meeting. And I'm hoping that they take this information and actually do something with it. But I'm not convinced that's going to happen.
Right.
But there's things we can do in this county, but I'll break there, and you can ask whatever questions you want.
Yeah. So you did hit a lot, and there is a lot to unpack regarding the flock cameras. One of the things that you touched on was like misuse, right? And there was a recent case. I mean, I reported on it out of Orlando, where I thought it was an Orlando police officer or a sheriff's deputy who had misused the flock camera data to stalk his wife. I mean, or a girlfriend, whatever it was. I'm not getting the exact details, but that was a big case. Yeah. He got arrested. So if you think if it can happen once, how do we know it's not happening in a multitude of ways by numerous individuals who have access to that data? And just to go on to a second case, and I'm going to let you respond to that and the other. But as we talked, we've seen some news recently in the state of Washington where a jurisdiction there said, we don't want them here. Now, there was a lot of back and forth as to why. But that's a big open case right now. What are your thoughts on both of those issues?
Well, I mean, there can't be a single time that it's misused. If you're gonna have them, and I preference this, but I told the representatives and our senator that of course we're for law enforcement. I'm for law enforcement. I'm for catching bad guys. I don't want murderers going loose. I don't want child rapists going. I don't want car thieves, etc. I get all that, right? Mm-hmm. But we cannot violate our Constitution to get there. You just need to work a little harder. You have to work harder. You have to ask questions. Maybe you have to go door to door to get Ring cameras, etc. But they shouldn't just be a blanket surveillance of every single tag and plate that drives by. And my problem, and I spoke to this with the representatives, is that they're just recording all this information. And there's countless examples of misusing this information. For example, I told them about that case where the officer used it to track down the girlfriend or whatever, right? That could happen again. We want to make sure that doesn't happen, right? And I'm sure that's isolated. I'm sure it's not rampant anywhere. But what is rampant is that you need to have a reason to stop somebody. And a camera that is not monitored by a human is not sufficient to stop me and stop my freedom. For example, if you run the plate and the plate says, well, this individual that owns the car could have a warrant. But what happens if somebody else is driving the car? And this has happened. If you go to YouTube, you'll see it, where a mother was pulled out of the car, stretched on the ground, was detained, etc. And you know what? They never had a valid reason to pull her anyway. That is not a reason a flock camera or some Chinese camera that's remotely spying on people. That is not a sufficient reason for law enforcement to pull you over, in my opinion, unless there's some laws or something changed. I don't. I mean, before you know it, it's going to be. And the sheriff even mentioned this. He goes, "Well, there's capability to scan every plate to see if the person had insurance or not. There's a reason why they asked you for proof of insurance. They already know whether you have insurance or not. You know that, right? Law enforcement already knows this.
Yes.
They have a data system. Your license is suspended and your plate is invalid if you let your insurance lapse. So why are they asking for it? You know why? Because it's not foolproof.
Yeah.
If the insurance company didn't communicate with the government, they didn't. Maybe you got insurance that day and it didn't get reported yet. Right? Maybe you cleared up stuff. So that is not just cause to stop me.
No.
And and I am not okay with a government that's not doesn't have checks and balances. You got to have checks and balances, and in a remote. And you know what's going to happen next after that, including that, is there's going to be automatic tickets sent to you.
Right.
What happens when they say, well, you were speeding and this camera caught you? Well, we've already been down that road, and our citizens are not having it.
That's right.
And I mentioned our senator and our representative about that, and I say, we talk about, as a Republican Party, about 80-20 issues and 90-10 issues, right? I go, this is one of those ones.
Yes.
This is at least an 80-20, if not a 90-10, that no one wants to be surveilled. They don't want to be tracked. They don't want anything happening like that. And there was another YouTube, and you can look all this up, and I know it's a lot of information, but there was another YouTube where a guy was traveling through a town, and these cameras were picking up how often he was driving through. And I understand what they're looking for. They're looking for drug traffickers. They're looking for things like that. And, the first thing they do is pull him over and say, why are you driving through my town 8 times? You know what I told our senator and our representative? If somebody pulls me over and asks me where I'm coming from, where I'm going, it's none of your damn business. That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
That is not okay.
Yeah.
That's not okay for you to be doing that. It's not okay to you be tracking. What if I'm going to my daughter's house 2 or 3 times a day? Or I want to see my grandkid. You know what? It's none of your business, bottom line. That's the kind of stuff we cannot have happen.
But that's what is happening, though, Steve, and that we don't know. And this is this second part of this issue is that we don't know what kind of data, what's being collected. They don't have to tell us. And I know I've said this 100 times, beating a dead horse, that you guys were threatened as BOCC members not to say a word about the program when it first was deployed. So, the fact is, like I said, everyone could be a potential target. Innocent people can be targets. Again, like you said, let's monitor how many times a person drives down a street, and then let's build some probable cause. They become a target. Maybe that's not happening, but we don't know because there's no transparency. And the agency, the Hernando County Sheriff's Office, the agency who has deployed these on all the county roads throughout, a lot of areas throughout the state, they're not going to, Sheriff Al Ninais doesn't want to tell us what it's being used for. I've asked the question several times, didn't get an answer. So, that's got to be probably the biggest issue, right?
Yeah. Well, it definitely is. And, he did it properly. He did get the permits and did all that, but he never discussed it with us. Yeah. And then when it came out from a citizen actually brought this up, not us, right? And we're like, what cameras? What are you talking about? And then all of a sudden we get that email saying, don't talk about that. And it made it sound like that we could be impeding on investigation or something. I've learned a lot since then over the last year. And, and it's very frightening what I'm seeing. And everyone should be. And, I had a post up and and a couple people said, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, what do you got to worry about? And I'm not doing anything wrong. Right. But you know what? I don't want Big Brother watching me. I'm a free person of these United States,
Yeah.
and we're supposed to be the free state of Florida. I call on our governor that touts he's a free state of Florida, and by the way, I tagged him on my post. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it, representatives? What are you going to do about it, governor? And the more and more I see what's going on, the more rhetoric. It's just a show, a dog and pony show, just like the tax thing. Everything they're proposing, none of it's going to pass.
Right.
Right. So how can you just have a clean bill that says, "Hey, we're going to eliminate property taxes. This is how we're going to do it." I mean, but it's every time you deal with some of these elected officials, it's all about like I'm not sure sometimes what they're thinking, because if
Politics.
you're a Republican, I thought we were on the same page,
No.
but to me it's really elementary. And Tom, we could in Hernando County right now. I need one vote from a county commissioner. Me and Ryan Amsler are for getting rid of them. The other three are not.
Yeah.
The sheriff could single-handedly get rid of them right now. Right? So be done with it. Right? So
Well,
and this is not a popular thing. I don't understand why it's so complicated.
Steve, it takes, you know the answer to this. You've been a commissioner since, was it 2016, right? Am I
Yep.
right? Okay.
Yes.
You know
Yes.
what politics is all about. You've been one of the few commissioners in Hernando County who has not really played that game. And you've been, a true patriot and a constitutionalist, and you've been about, freedoms and liberties. Let me give you an example. The ATV issue. You stood against the ordinance, and how about what was the other issue? The the body cameras, which has been,
Yep.
you talk about a 90-10. That's one of those issues that everyone wanted fixed for years and years, and it took loud mouths like you and I, and like the community, to come out and keep saying things. We want to change this issue. So maybe this is what it's going to take. Politics is politics, but maybe that's what it's going to take to get Nienhuis to say, okay, maybe okay.
Hey, listen, the other thing I thought about is filing a lawsuit myself against them. Nobody's stopping me.
That's right.
I mean, I could do it. Or I run for sheriff and I get rid of myself.
That's right.
And you know what? The more and more, the more they're pushing me more into it, because I tell you, I am not happy with this. I'm not happy. This is not acceptable.
No.
So the sheriff, if you're watching this, the people do not want these. And the difference between a body camera and these spy cameras, it's a different contrast. And I know I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. If you stop my freedom and you're detaining me as an officer because I had a traffic violation or whatever, it must be recorded because you stopped my freedom. These cameras are just randomly scanning everybody, taking pictures and tracking my movement. And they can, with their software, type my tag number in, which is why they made this law now. You know about this new law, right? New law where you can't have a covering on your plate, because if not, you get arrested. Not a ticket. You go to jail. You get a notice to appear, which is just like being arrested, with your mugshot online, but for a covering on a plate. You know why? Because they want to track your movement with these cameras. It's all about this. This is what it's about.
Yes.
The government wants to know everything you're doing it, when you're doing it, how you're doing it. That's not acceptable.
Yep, it's cheating, and it's absolutely against our constitutional rights. And you mentioned the tag covers and the frames.
Yep.
An individual we know both. I'm sure Nick won't mind, but Nick Smith,
Yep.
he publicized that he was technically arrested for having a frame on his tag or a screen. Well, I just found out a few days, like yesterday, that the judge dropped the charges, and his words said it was silly. So, it is silly. A lot of this stuff is silly, but the cameras themselves, it's going to take pressure, and it's like anything else. Now, just on a good note, again, something that took you and the community and our reporting on the issue about body cameras, found out after talking to the PIO that they are going to launch. They have the training in February of 2026, and then they're rolling out the cameras shortly after. I don't know the exact date, but it'll be right after that. So at least, you know what? Congratulations, and that's at least one big win for the real true conservatives, right?
Definitely. And the expense is really high. It could have been done cheaper. I think the sheriff was. He thought he'd throw a big number at me in, and I was gonna back down. and we had vendors show up there and said they can do it for a fraction of the cost. Whatever. We have to get it done.
Yeah.
We have to get it done. And we're one of 10 counties that don't have it.
Yep.
I have urged our governor. I think that he should mandate it in this day and age. Every single law enforcement agency should have them.
Yeah.
I know the state agencies do. So why doesn't every county have them? And if the governor has to supplement the smaller counties, that's what he has to do.
Right.
You know, he's talked about that even with the tax situation. So, and I think our governor does a good job. I think he's done I think he's done a great job over his 2 terms. But there's a few little loose ends like this that we need to iron up. And, you know, more importantly, there needs to be confidence in law enforcement. And, you know, the men and women that are out there that serve us in Hernando County Sheriff's Office do a fabulous job.
Yes, they do. Yeah, they do.
And they are not advocating for this stuff. I'm sure it makes their job easier. And I've even talked to the prosecutors and they go, well, it is a useful tool. And I get it. I understand. But it's an easy way. It's an easy way if you just track everybody. You know?
Oh, yeah.
But what about the people that get caught up in the middle of it and get wrongfully accused of stuff and all this other stuff? Not to mention it's just fundamentally wrong to just track anyone. If I didn't commit a crime, you don't have a right to track me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well,
so
like you said,
we've got to figure out a way to fix this.
Like you said, and then we can, you know, I just hate to bring up another example. What if you're driving into, you know, you're visiting somebody in Spring Hill that happens to be involved in illegal activity, but you don't know that, right? Well, now your vehicle's being tagged and, you know, being recorded is going to that residence on however many occasions, and suddenly you run the risk, because probable cause has been developed, you run the risk of being pulled over and illegally detained.
Yeah. I don't think these cameras prove any probable cause, and I don't think they have a right to pull anybody over without unless it's. I mean, there could be exceptions, but the problem is when you make exceptions, then they expand upon that. I mean, I think someone a higher level at the state level or even the Supreme Court, tell you the truth, in this country really needs to start looking at this technology, saying, hey, what's acceptable and what's not? And then if there is going to be this technology used, then it needs to be strictly enforce the rules. I mean, have specific rules with, you know, no one can even view this stuff without putting a warrant in or something. I'm not sure what the solution is, but for now, they should not be used until this is ironed out. I think it's unacceptable to do that. Now, the other thing that really causes concern with me is when I go to Flock's system or I go on the website and they advertise that they use this for private use. And I keep asking, no one gives me an answer. I go, how is it that they can determine who's who if they can't access the database?
Right.
That's concerning that a private company can access the database of DMV.
Yep.
If that's the case, another unacceptable thing.
Yep.
And where's that data going? And who's it going to? And not to mention that this should be public information. And if it is public information, and then Tom Lemons decides to know, I'm going to get Steve Champion's plate and I'm going to see where he's going. Because guess what? I believe it's all subject to public information. If it is, then now you're going to allow a citizen that maybe with ill intent to go tracking an official or the sheriff or whoever. You know, have you ever thought about that?
Well, that's exactly
as it is. We're already being targeted.
Yeah, that's exactly one of the elements of what the state of Washington has said is we should have the right to do a public records request on whatever footage we want between what date, here, there, whatever. That's what they want to pass. And look, why not? Or in addition, these agencies need to make it very clear to the public through an SOP, whatever, that this is precisely what it's being used for. These are our limitations, and this is as far as we'll go. That way, I think people would be happy with that. But I don't know. There's still so many issues.
Well, there's got to be some laws and rules in place, and you know, and just to say, I'm sure law enforcement has good intent. You know, I'm sure they want to catch bad guys.
Right.
I get it, right? And you know, the sheriff even told me, he goes, "Well, I caught a murderer," and I'm like, I think he even asked for public where, who, give me details. I haven't seen any details on it.
Yep.
You know, and I'm not saying he's a liar. I'm sure he did, right? So, but it is not okay. And I even read a quote. I don't have it in front of me. I don't know the exact words, but it was from Ben Franklin. And he said, if you cannot give up your liberty to get a little security, and if you do, then you don't deserve liberty or security. You know, you cannot give up your rights. You know, and I don't know the exact quote. You can Google it in a few seconds. But he said that in 1755, way before even the Constitution and other stuff. When they were forming this country, you know, the Constitution is our rights. That is the Bill of Rights is those are given to us by, through the Constitution by God.
right.
And you shouldn't have this big government, and it's getting way too big, by the
Yeah,
way.
absolutely.
Way too big everywhere.
Absolutely. Real quick.
And I'm not for big government.
No, I hate to say this, but I think, and this may happen with the body cameras too, the way they may find the ability to prevent transparency from being so easy is to just charge like crazy so no one will spend the money to pull the records.
Well, there's, yeah.
I mean,
well, there's that too.
Yeah, there's that too.
I don't know anything about that, but I mean, obviously there's something wrong with all that.
Yeah.
When, number one, it takes so long to get it.
Yeah.
And number two, why did you have to hide everything?
Yeah.
Why didn't you just come to the county commission and say, I got this great idea. It's going to be fabulous for
Yes.
fighting crime.
Yes.
And you know what? We're going to put them on your right of ways. And just in case anybody asks about it, just tell them how great they are.
Yeah.
You know what would have happened? We would have shot it down in 2 seconds, and it would have never got through. And he knows that. The sheriff knows that.
Yep.
He did it anyway behind our back.
Sure did.
And that's the bottom line. Now, he did get permission and he did get a permit from the county. I don't understand why they didn't say something to us. Maybe because they were threatened with, you can't say anything about this. Probably, I would imagine. But I'm guessing that because I know what we were given.
Well, it certainly seems like Flock has a lot of power in our country right now. But with that, Steve, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And, I definitely look forward to having you back on. And thank you for your insight. Anything else you want me to let our audience know that's coming up? I know you mentioned something, but I don't know if you want to bring it out right now.
Yeah, I'll mention it. I've been working on something, and I've actually talked about this in the commission before, about these businesses that have deceptive practices where they're charging you to use a credit card, but they do not take cash. So a few months ago, I think it was about 6 months ago, I put an ordinance out there that I wanted to mandate you must take cash. I can't even believe I have to say that. I thought the legal tender says right on there for all debts, public and private. Ever since then, the government's gone wild and they're completely crazy, and they don't make people take cash. And now there's all these places not taking cash, and they're charging crazy fees on top of it. So today I brought it up again, and actually the 3 that voted against me all said that they would vote for you must take cash if you charge a fee for credit cards. So that's coming.
Yep. We'll see what happens. Steve, thank you so much for joining me again tonight. We'll have you on again soon.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
All right. That's all we got tonight.